Hey guys, Alf here. Okay, let's try that again. Never again. What's up guys, it's Alfred Cunningham from the internet. I cover pro wrestling for one of the biggest publications in the world and Forbes. Of course, by the biggest publication in the world, I mean Pro Wrestling Bits. Subscribe in Swahili, your stickers are coming soon. The streets say I'm AEW's biggest critic, because honestly, I am. But I like AEW. I cover almost all their pay-per-views. I've interviewed their talent. I've interviewed Tony Khan. When they're good, I give them praise. When I think the product sucks, I bury them 6 feet into the ground. Nothing wrong with that. Media censorship is at an all-time high. Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, UFC, WWE, TKO, Turki Alalshikh have all come under fire for limiting media access for their biggest critics, sometimes even banning them altogether. But what about Tony Khan? I never hear about Tony Khan's policy when it comes to inviting his critics to his media scrums. Does Tony Khan fall in line with the Donald Trumps and the Turki Alalshikhs of the world, where Tony bans his critics from press conferences too? Getting into a press conference isn't so much about journalism as much as it's about tribalism. It doesn't come down to who you write for, it's more or less who you write about. So what would happen if one of Tony Khan's biggest critics applied for a media credential? Well, I'm one of Tony Khan's biggest critics. I applied for a media credential. Let's find out together.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's really classy. Thank you. You don't have to thank you for doing that. That is, I don't ask for that. You don't have to applaud in our press conferences, but I appreciate you doing that.
The year is 2025. The scene is these United States and most of planet Earth. A loud, specific noise emanates in the distance. That noise is professional wrestling, because pro wrestling is on fire. Gutwrenches, guillotines, and graps are sitting on a gold mine. The fire burns so hot in this business, it needs a 5-star frog splash to put it out. I mean, that or the Nielsen company, but we'll see. The nucleus of pro wrestling's resurgence lies in its competition. Battle lines are drawn, and a new war has drawn as much tribalism as it has dollar signs. For the first time in 18 years, WWE's dynasty was challenged by another corporation. Enter AEW, who not only challenged WWE, but AEW colonized Wednesday nights after the Wednesday Night War. A wrestling war is fought with many a silent weapon: TV ratings, TV deals, free agency, Twitter beefs, public relations. At the end of the day, the battles boil down to grown men telling other grown men to write bad things about the billionaires they despise. It's all just public relations, and the public relations arm in pro wrestling is among the most swole. Media outlets and influential voices within the gullible wrestling space are weaponized by WWE and AEW. Positive coverage gives way to media credentials and unbridled access to interviews and fan fests disguised as press conferences. TKO came under fire for blocking media credentials from prominent boxing journalists because they had dissenting opinions with TKO and the world's most polarizing promoter, Turki Alalshikh. WWE was called out for pulling media credentials from anybody who asked about Janelle Grant. After the return of Brock Lesnar, WWE ultimately canceled the press conferences altogether. It's Trumpism in 2025, and censorship goes crazy. So if you don't have anything nice to say, you won't be allowed to say it at all.
TKO has not credentialed a lot of people. They're claiming it is not their decision, which makes it Turkey's decision. It is consistent, although TKO has, when it comes to the wrestling, has not credentialed a lot of people of late either, based on dissenting viewpoints and things like that, or coverage of the Janelle Grant case in some cases. The feeling is that people who have any dissenting viewpoints with Turkey are not going to get credentialed for any of these fights. And in Saudi Arabia, there's a wing in a prison called the Tutu wing or something, which is Turkey's nickname, that dissenting journalists are thrown in prison there.
A new national wrestling corporation brought about another dictator in the wrestling business. Some wrestling organizations have promoters, but Tony Khan is not a promoter. Tony Khan is the dictator of AEW. Don't let anybody tell you different. Unlike WWE, AEW is not a publicly traded company. Tony Khan does not answer to shareholders. There's no board of directors. Tony Khan is the board of directors. In fact, he hired Michael Mansouri when he got board of directors. Every decision about AEW goes through its feeble dictator. a man who holds unilateral power over this company, but he wields that power with the accuracy of Chris Davis during a hitting slump. Some of the most brutal examples include the brawl out, the brawl in, the exploding barbed wire, all stains on Tony Khan's real-time legacy. Tony Khan built AEW into a pro wrestling powerhouse by being in the right place at the right time with the right balance. But Nepo baby or not, Tony pulled off the near impossible feat of building a viable challenger to the biggest wrestling promotion of all time in the middle of another WWE monopoly. If Tony Khan is to be blamed for everything wrong with AEW, he's also to be praised for everything that went right. Everything that created the wrestling business's second biggest revenue stream. The modern era of WWE is run by a polarizing parliament defined by 3 letters of its own. No, not Triple H, TKO. The TKO brass has ushered in a new era of windfall, profit margins, and product placement. Through Ari Emanuel, Nick Khan, Triple H, and The Rock, Hollywood royalty crossbred with pro wrestling royalty to give birth to the TKO money counter of death. That Netflix money, that ESPN money. Domestic deals gave way to world domination. That Scotland money, that South of France money, that Saudi money. Most of what goes into a wrestling war is invisible to the average family of 4 who legit just wants to enjoy wrestling. A wrestling war is fought in the dark and behind the scenes, but in the ugly underbelly that is the wrestling business, the war is front and center. You'll never hear any mention of AEW during a SmackDown broadcast, but backstage, WWE reportedly talks shit about Tony Khan. They call him the Snowman, a nod to Tony's rumored love of the Coco. This rumor is prominent among anybody who's met Tony for at least 10 seconds, but it was popularized by Ariel Helwani, a journalist who Tony Khan accused of being in WWE's pocket. You're a fraud, Ariel Helwani. You're as legitimate of a reporter as Tony Schiavone, wrote Tony Twitter Fingers in 2022. Tony Khan is no stranger to fraud journalists. In this increasingly bitter wrestling war, one of Tony's closest confidants is also the biggest journalistic fraud to ever write a run-on sentence in wrestling. Tony's PR general is Dave Meltzer. Professional wrestling media's premier slow adult, Dave Meltzer reported that dubious snowman story to create a negative perception of WWE, one which would hopefully lead to negative PR hit pieces about WWE's bullying tactics, thereby making AEW's Tony Khan come off as a more relatable, down-to-earth dictator.
There's no second chance if you write the wrong thing. You're gone. And, more and more, that's what we're getting. It's a story of, across the board, when you see people, they don't want any, nobody wants to make waves because it's access journalism. And if you have access journalism, you have to kiss up to the people who provide the access. If you're critical to them, they'll find somebody else. Once you have the situation where everyone can be a reporter, it allows you to pick and choose only favorable reporters and ignore the ones that are unfavorable.
Not only does Dave have the complexion of granite rock, but he leaves no stone unturned when covering WWE and TKO's unsavory tactics against the media. Can you believe Lance Pugmire wasn't invited to the Canelo and Crawford fight? Rude. What do you mean Brandon Thurston can't ask his token question about Janelle Grant at the WWE press conferences? So rude. Turki Alalshikh and the TKO era have brought censorship to the combat sports media. But what about Tony Alalshikh? Tony Khan been censoring wrestling media critics. A simple screening of AEW's Media Scrums will reveal some of the most lick-splitting, sycophantic, run-on sentences ever softballed by a fake journalist.
And I just wanted to ask what it was like to come into a company and see so many Black champions and what it meant to challenge right off the bat, essentially, a former Black world champion.
I don't like that. I don't like that Black champion. It's just a champion. See, we've normalized this already, and that's what I want to do with it. You winning a title as a Black champion, and there's other Black champions here. We can kind of erase that word now. We could just say champion.
Once upon a time, I was considered AEW friendly media. I write for one of the biggest publications in the world, and even outside of that, I built up a following of almost 40,000 subscribers in a few short years. Subscribe in Swahili. I am one of one. As an influential voice, I am a weapon for both wrestling companies to get their message out. AEW had a spark when it started, and I was mostly positive in my coverage of the promotion during their honeymoon phase. As a result, the AEW dictatorship liked me. AEW sent me one talent interview after another. I never asked. The dictatorship would be all like, "Would you like to converse with Kenny Omega?" Sure. How about a conversation with Chris Jericho? All right. You want to talk it up with Tony Khan? I mean, I guess. It was all Gucci with Big Alfie and Daly's Place. But as soon as I started criticizing AEW for its mayonnaise-flavored main event scene, the same way I've done in the past with WWE since the first article I ever wrote, AEW cut me off. No interviews, no access. They even blocked me from their online media library so I couldn't use their promotional pictures, and I get it. I'm a petty male cancer, so if I was a dictator, I'd probably do the same thing if some clever African started talking shit. The point is, when it comes to media censorship, Tony Alalshikh is no different from Turki Alalshikh or TKO. If you would like unlimited access to AEW's Media Scrum Fan Fest, then no talky greasy about Tiny Tony, okay? I never went to AEW Media Scrums even when I could, because honestly, they're really just useless circle work exhibitions and they always end up being catnip for lol cow content. I cringe enough watching them on YouTube. I'd probably pass out from the glazing gas if I was there live. In 2022, as part of this pro wrestling bit, I applied for an AEW credential just to see what the rejection letter looked like, and they responded by saying they didn't have enough room, which wasn't the rejection I thought it would be. Like, they ain't even use a hard R, nothing. So lying about your capacity is a start. In fact, for the WrestleDream pay-per-view cycle, I made a good faith application to see if Tony Khan and AEW censored their media critics the way TKO and Turki Alalshikh does. If accepted, I'll strongly consider attending that press conference. I might even vlog about it for you, the messy PWB subscriber. First, I completed a media application back in August through Google Forms. AEW sent me this form through an auto reply when I emailed media@allelitewrestling.com. Not only did I follow up with that email a few weeks later, I sent another form just to be sure. When I applied for an AEW media credential, AEW reached out to me personally. I got a call from the Wizard of Oz. It's not who you think it is. Well, maybe it is, but I wouldn't tell you if it was. AEW thinks I hate their guts. I told the Wizard of Oz what questions I planned to ask if I was invited to that presser. And as AEW's biggest critic looking to ask real questions, AEW turned me down. Where are all you sickos coming from? Are you paying my mortgage? Okay, then get the fuck. The entire combat sports industry is very selective with whom they invite to their media scrums. Turki Alalshikh is no different than Tony Alalshikh. But just for fun, let's see what prestigious beacons of journalism that Tony Alalshikh invites to his media scrums.
Hey, Tony, Rob Wong from Toronto Sun. Nice to speak with you again.
David Portman from Poison Rana.
Angad here from Tech Goggles.
Braden Harrington here from Poison Rana.
Drew Dolby, Brock and Dolby Show, Rogers Sports and Media.
Hi, Tony. Ella J, a wrestling gal.
Logan Brown with the Behind the Bell podcast.
Mark Webster from WrestleDream. I had a question.
Matt Kosandu for Screen of Script.
Hi, John with the Bruiser podcast. Hi, Tony. Ryan Silverpan from the Pomona Watchmen. This is Rich with the Greatest Folk Show podcast.
Hi, Athena. Amy Nemedy with WrestleJoy.
Stu Murray, Sports Guys Talking Wrestling.
Jonathan with Behind the Ropes Media. Derek T. Lewis here with the D-Loop Podcast and Believe Network.
Mark Quill, Wrestling Observer.
AEW denied my credentials, which means I have less access to AEW than Ray Birchfield Jr. Maybe if I had a basement full of victims, I'd have a chance. I'm one of AEW's harshest critics, even if Wikipedia says different. The business of wrestling promotion is built around platforming the positives and censoring the negative. Tony Khan was once a junior correspondent for the Wrestling Observer newsletter, which is like co-managing the arts and crafts aisle at a Target in San Dimas. As a result, Mouthpiece Meltzer gets unlimited access to AEW Media Scrums because one of his paid subscribers of the Wrestling Observer newsletter is also the dictator of AEW. No conflict of interest there. Tony Khan does not like what I have to say about his product, and therefore I'm banned for life. Or at least banned for now. Like my guy Meltzer said put it, I got thrown in the Shad Khan wing. But if Tony Alalshikh ever had the balls to unban his biggest critic, here's what I would ask. Hi Tony, you recently called AEW a family-friendly product suitable for children of all ages. Days later, AEW All Out featured excessive blood, thumbtacks, stabbing, fire, and foul language. Do you still consider AEW a family-friendly product, yes or no? Ray Birchfield Jr. was recently detained for holding 4 people captive in his basement. He's an avid wrestling fan and was even shown posing with you at an AEW event. Do you have any relationship with this individual, and what is your reaction to this story? The new big data rating system could be disastrous for AEW ratings. If AEW is unable to land a new TV deal due to this ratings downturn, would AEW consider working with Saudi Arabia to stay afloat? Speaking of Saudi Arabia, Turki Alalshikh has come under fire for banning members of the combat sports media from his press conferences. What is your process when it comes to credentialing members of the wrestling media, particularly your critics? In other words, if somebody was too critical of AEW, would they be banned from these fake media scrums? Like most people, Andrade recently called Dave Meltzer a liar amid Meltzer's reporting on Andrade's AEW departure. Can you confirm or deny Andrade's comments and who's telling the truth? Here's more on the WWE versus AEW war, which once got so petty it led to the longest wrestling pay-per-view of all time. Learn all about it here. Have you been banned by AEW? Tell me in the comments!